So in this video, I've got a couple of questions that I want to put to you, and I'd love you to answer those in the comment section down below so I can kind of gauge exactly what you think of the topics I want to cover in this video. Now, first of all, is WordPress still succeeding because of, or in spite of, the core updates that we've seen like Gutenberg and full site editing and so on? Now, I think there are currently 4 different types of WordPress users. You've got your typical user that just wants to build a website and they want to build something really quickly, so they'll use something like a classic theme, spin it up and just get building and use that as a kind of easy way into working with WordPress. The second I see are going to be more people like myself, which use WordPress as the foundation and then abstract it by using tools like Bricks Builder, Elementor, those kinds of tools. Then I'd say you've got your hybrid users, which kind of use abstraction layers like, for example, Bricks, and then they also use Gutenberg alongside it to create basic content and so on. Finally, I think you've got people like Brian Coords who take what you have as WordPress and then they expand it through code using JSON files and so on, and they'll build the functionality they want into Gutenberg itself, so it kind of feels like a native way of working. Now, I'll link to Brian's channel and the article he released recently in the description down below. Check his channel out. He's a very talented guy doing some really solid work. Now, me personally, I would say that WordPress is still as popular as it is in spite of Gutenberg and full site editing for most users. What am I talking about? Well, if you take a look at WordPress and using that as the foundation to build on top of, using what we would consider abstraction layers. In other words, things that sit on top of WordPress itself. Things like Elementor, Bricks Builder, and so on. Now, why do I think this? Well, let's just take a look at some statistics on WordPress.org where you can see different plugins and themes and things that have been downloaded and the number of active installs. Maybe not a totally scientific way of working, but it gives you some example of the disparity between tools like Elementor, the free version and the pro version, and Bricks and Divi and so on, and Gutenberg, the project itself. Now, I know you could easily argue that, well, Gutenberg is built into WordPress, but we're going to look at Gutenberg, the plugin, which is the more sort of feature-rich, the more up-to-date way of working with Gutenberg. So if we go over to WordPress.org, and I'll link these in the description so you can check these out as well. If you take a look at Gutenberg, you can see the active installs are 300,000 plus. Now, this has been out over 6 years. You kind of think there would be more here. Now, if we take a look at something like Elementor, again, this is the free version, and this has been out probably a little longer, but not by that much. And you can see this has over 10 million installs. That's just the free version. That's not even mentioning you have anything else. Now, if you extrapolate that and you take a look at something like Divi, which has been out longer than Elementor and still has a massive user base, take a look at Bricks, take a look at Breakdance and Oxygen, which have smaller user bases. But when you combine all of these tools together, and then also include things like Generate Blocks and Green Shift and Quickly, although that's not such a relevant thing these days, but all those kinds of tools that are Gutenberg-esque, that sit on top of Gutenberg itself in a slightly different way, but they're still abstracting away from WordPress. I think we can see that these are the tools that are making WordPress more usable for a lot of people. But again, I would welcome your feedback. What do you think? Do you think that these are the things that are helping WordPress stay relevant these days? Or do you think these are nowhere near the number of actual installs of WordPress that don't even touch tools like this? I'd love to get your feedback. Drop a comment down below and let me know. Now let's take that to another step. We've got 2 different kinds of themes. So if we take away tools like, Generate Blocks, and we take away tools like Elementor and Bricks and so on, and we just stick with themes, you've got 2 different kinds. You've got full site editing themes, which are very, very few at the moment, maybe in a couple of hundred at a push. And then you've got what are called classic themes, things like Generate Press, Bloxy, Cadence, and so on, that sit, again, on top of WordPress. They integrate into the customizer, but they kind of give you a slightly abstracted experience of building websites, and they give you the functionality that may be missing in something like full site editing. These then can work in conjunction with a tool like Gutenberg itself, or they can use other tools like Elementor, or you can use things like Brizzy and so on that sit again on top, adding that abstraction layer again. So there's this massive disparity. Why? Well, that's a question I think for more technical people than myself, but I think one of the key problems is because full site editing is still so convoluted and difficult for a lot of people. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense in a lot of ways. It's still relatively basic in a lot of areas. Take the menu builder as a good example. I think all of these things are making it more difficult for people to adopt it, which means that there's more difficulty for people to actually create those themes when there's not that many people adopting it. So things will have to change there, and I'm sure they will change in the future. But have you tried full-site editing? What are your thoughts? Do you still prefer to go back to something like a classic theme if you want to use a theme, like I say, something like Bloxy and so on? Or do you rather work with full-site editing? Or are you in the camp of scratch all of those things and get stuck in with a tool like Bricks or Elementor Pro and build everything from scratch? Again, let me have your comments down below because I'd love to know what you're doing. Now, finally, I think one of the things that a lot of people talk about is if you're using Gutenberg and using full-site editing, you are closer to the WordPress core. And while there may be some validity in the thinking behind it, I think it's blown out of proportion. If you consider, if you want speed as one of the most important factors, which when it comes to a WordPress website, these are some of the things you have to take into consideration. Using a good tool like Generate Blocks and Generate Press, for example, or theme like Bloxy or Cadence, or using something like Bricks Builder, you can get just as fast without any real need for including any additional plugins to speed things up. As long as you design in a proper way and you optimize everything you need, you can get incredibly fast sites under 2-second load times, even under 1-second load times. So I think this whole closer to core and the benefits you get from that, I think they're kind of blown out of proportion and they're a little bit of a myth. But again, I would love to get your feedback. Am I right? Am I wrong? What are your experiences if you've tried different methods? Again, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, this isn't a video about this is exactly what's happening or this is the 100% with validity. This is more a case of these are my thoughts, my experiences, and listening and looking at what's going on in the WordPress community as a whole at this point in time and has been for several months. There's a lot of interesting conversations going on, some of which have come from the live streams and the videos that I've released very recently, and they've kind of sparked the debate, which in my opinion is a good thing. If you want to check out that video that started everything, which is the UI UX sucks, you can check that video out here. And also the recent live streams that I've done will be down in the description down below. Check those out. There's a lot of interesting information in there. As always, my name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.